Hello and welcome to Le Mans for the Le Mans Esports Super Final. We have had 8 races over the last 19 hours of competition. We started yesterday at 10:30 in the morning, the first race at 11 o'clock. We've had all the drivers behind here racing through the night. And here we are at 9:30, about to go for the final race. $25,000 up for grabs. Some teams already have netted some rather nice tools. MAD Motorsport, MAD Motorsport have got $12,000 in their back pocket right now because from the first 8 races, first, second and third got some winnings. $3,000 for the first place, $2,000 for second, and $1,000 for third place. Now it all changes. We're into the final race, the one that really matters. $25,000 will go to the winning team, but more important than that, they'll get to stand on the top step here at Le Mans. And somebody who knows all about doing just that is Alan McNish, and we have him with us. So please welcome Alan McNish. It's your fan club. They go everywhere with you, don't they? Alan, thank you so much for stopping by. There's a lot of drivers behind here, a lot of competitors that will need some encouragement from you because they've been going at it now for a long, long time. They've been out there for 19 hours of competition over a very long period of time, and this is something that you're used to.
Yeah, I know a 24-hour race is something very special. To be here at Le Mans is a very special thing for all of these drivers. And I think it's an interesting way that this is run because one thing I know about racing at Le Mans is always about adapting to new situations, new circumstances, the day, the night, and especially now with the last blast towards the checkered flag. And they've done that with a series of races in the different types of cars. But all I can tell you is with that trophy, with the prize money and with the chance to take your trophy on top of the podium of Le Mans is a once-in-a-lifetime often experience. And so you've got 1.5 hours, you've got a big possibility ahead of you, and it's down to you guys. Keep it flat out and go for it. And that is it. It's not over until the checkered flag falls.
Absolutely, you say a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. For you, it's more than once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. But what is it like racing for 24 hours and not getting to stand on the podium?
I have to be honest with you, it's a lot better standing on the podium than not. You know, being here, I think, is a testament to itself. To be able to be part of this whole history and experience. And I came here for the first time when I was 15 years old in karting on the Alain Prost circuit for the Karting World Championship. So it really gets back into you, and I'm now here so many years later. But being honest about it, we're all into racing, we're all into competition. Every single one of these teams has built up for this day, built up for this last push in towards the checkered flag. And therefore, there is always excitement about winning, but there's always a little bit of disappointment, frustration if you don't.
Yeah, some trepidation amongst them. So with you, we've looked at Le Mans because you've won it 3 times. You've got great history there, but also esports. So if we think about, first of all, Formula E and the electric formula, how endurance racing and electric formula are really pushing for what we see on our roads. But then we look at esports that these guys are doing behind us here, and that is something that's pushing the boundaries too.
I'm very interested in this because I think motorsport's changing. The world's changing. We are having to change with it, and this is a big part of the future. At the moment, it's growing, and the fact that it's actually here and the Le Mans Esports is here and it's got the support it has says that it's got a long future ahead of it. But it's the way it is because Formula E sits off one side of it. I think esports sits on the other side, but we're all big part of the ecosystem. And with that as well, I think they're the trendsetters. You know, you guys, you don't realize it right now, but you are actually leading the way for us to follow. And that's something that's pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And your son, I know, is a bit of a gamer. Is that a battle in the house?
It's always a battle in the house, and there's 2 battles. There's one, is it my turn or is it the other battle is obviously, as a father, you want them to focus on what they're meant to be doing, and he's focusing on his gaming.
Lovely. Now, before we get underway, any words of advice there are 35 competitors out there. One couldn't make it, so we're down to 35. Words of encouragement, words of advice that they should take to their seats.
It's very simple. There's 2. Well, in fact, there's 3. First one is, this is the last run to the checkered flag, and it doesn't finish until that checkered flag. Second one is, breathe. Always breathe, because you don't realize how tired you are at this stage. And the final one is, enjoy it. because this is a fantastic event and you are part of it. And if you do get the chance to be on that podium, then you're a very, very lucky person and lucky team. But congratulations to you all, and I look forward to seeing you on the podium.
Great stuff. Round of applause, please, for Alan McNish. Thank you, Alan. Yes, and of course, it is all about these drivers, these competitors behind. Go and take to your seats, guys. We'll come to you in just a bit. We're going to do the final run-up to the start of the final race. Let's have a look at the points then, because the points mean a lot in this race. And this is why. If you have a look at the points tally here, forget the points right now. Those points equal seconds. So if you flip it the other way around, Baguette Racing, 77 points. They start from 0. So when the race starts, they will run to their seat and get in the car. The next team, Kitty Crew, they are 7 points back. So they start 7 seconds later. They're not allowed to leave their area until 7 seconds have passed. And then we have the team MAD Motorsport on 66 points. They'll go a further 4 seconds after Kitty Crew, all the way down there to SMP Racing Esports on 17 points, 70 seconds, no, 60 seconds, 1 whole minute, sorry, behind Baguette Racing. That is a sizable chunk when you think 1 lap here is just over 3.5 minutes. So it is time to go over to our commentary team. We've got Chris McCarthy, we have Bo as well, all the way from Australia. Bo has been up for a very, very long time. We worked out that over the last 100 hours or so, he has been asleep for only 11 of them. So that explains the dark lines under his eyes, the dark shadowy bags. But his voice is fine, and here they are.
Oh boy.
Well, there we go. In the words of Alan McNish, breathe. This is the last run up to the line.
Oh.
Remember that this is the final push, and enjoy it.
Exactly.
I think we're both going to enjoy this. I'm sure you are too. Thank you for being with us for the Le Mans Esports Series Super Final, and this is the final race. As Alan said, now if you get into the top 3 in this race, you get to stand on that Le Mans podium, but there's also cash up for grabs, and even more than what we've had in the first 8 races. So the winner of this race will get $25,000, the team who wins. Second place will get $12,500. Third will get $7,500. Fourth place will get $4,000. Then we'll have $2,000 and $1,000. So big money up for grabs. Let's go down to Bryn. I believe he is catching up with one of the teams now.
Yeah, thanks very much there, Chris. I'm just trying to grab a few words from some of the teams just to see where their minds are at, because frazzled is, I'm sure, the answer. But Kian, you've been doing so well. You've got a nice amount of money in your pocket. It's been a really, really strong first 8 races. It all comes down to this one for the podium. Are we going to see you on it?
I think we have to be a bit realistic here and say that the car is probably not on pace in order to get up there, but we'll be fighting to try and take the last prize-winning money. 6th place is probably where we'll be pushing. That's expecting some M8s to make some mistakes in the tussle at the front, and hopefully we can make the 90 minutes worth it.
Right, okay, so realistic is a good thing to be, you don't overdo it, but anything can happen in motorsport, anything can happen in this sort of gaming as well. These situations, people's nerves can get the better of them, especially when they've been awake for such a long period of time, so good luck to you. Chris, this one is so hard to call.
It really is, and it was interesting to hear from the MAD Motorsport team. They're being realistic. Now, going into this, we've got the Modern GTE class. We know from an earlier race that the BMW is the superior car in this. MAD, sadly for them, they are not in that. They decided to take a little bit of a gamble with their money here and try and save some cash in this class to go bigger in the other classes. It's worked for them because they've won around $12,000 already. But unfortunately, in this race, a podium might be a long shot for them.
Yeah, unfortunately, I've been speaking to a few of the drivers before the race, and we're looking at the Porsche being around 2 to 3 seconds at least slower. So that's quite the margin that they're having a deficit with, and that's going to be in a straight line as well. So when it comes to hunting down that handicap that they do have to the cars in front, they've probably got their work cut out for them.
You know, as we said, they've won $4,000 each, and to do that in this race alone, they'd have to finish in 2nd place. So that's where we saw the different strategies come into play. Of course, we've got the time difference as well. They're going to have to start 11 seconds back from the leader, and in a GTE class, that is a huge gap, isn't it, Bo?
That's absolutely enormous, especially if you look at the results from Spa, where we're in the GT cars as well. The field was separated by nothing. It was absolute tenths of a second, not seconds. So for these guys who are 11 seconds, 15 seconds back, It will be tough, but it's the top 6 that get away with prizes. So that doesn't mean they're out of it by any stretch of the imagination. And like Alan said, it's not over till the checkered flag falls.
It isn't, and let's get back in and get a feel for the atmosphere as the tension is rising. Bryn, who have you caught up with now?
Boy, tension. Tension is an understatement. We are really struggling here. So many nervous faces. I mean, you touched upon the prize pot. It goes down to 6th place, so first place, $25,000. Second place gets $12,500 as a team. Third place, $7,500. Fourth place, $4,000. Wow. Fifth place gets $2,000 and sixth, $1,000. So basically, if you finish in the top half, you get some money. But as Alan was saying, if you finish in the top 3, you'll be on that podium, and everybody wants to get on the podium at Le Mans. I was trying to grab a couple of the teams, but they are rightly trying to focus on what they need to do at this moment. So I think we should leave them to it because there's a lot at stake. Forget the money, forget everything like that. This is the first ever Le Mans Esports final. It is a super final, and this is history in the making right now. So Chris and Bo, I'm going to hand back to you. Sit back, relax, and watch and listen to what you're up to.
Well, Bryn, we got to the end of 24 hours, and for the first time, Bryn with no friends in the arena, but hopefully that changes over the next few minutes. It is hard to catch up with the teams at this stage.
Yeah.
Bo, what are they going to be doing at this stage now? Of course, this is the first time throughout the whole of the event where all the drivers need to take part in this race. That's going to be a factor. But what do you think it is? What are the final words that they're going to be going through?
It's exactly what you said. Of course, there's going to be 3 drivers in this race, so I think they're going to be just working out where you put those drivers in, because of course, this isn't going to be everyone's strength. GT cars are not going to be everyone's strength. So you need to make sure that you mix it up and have someone, where you think they're going to be able to make the most moves. Do you put them in at the start so they can hunt a lot of that gap down early where they might be up against other fast drivers? Or do you put a slower driver in and then try and put your faster driver in towards the end where the money matters?
Yeah, that's definitely a point worth bearing, isn't it? Of course, let's look at the track. We're going to be on the modern Le Mans circuit, 90-minute race, so we're thinking around 24 laps in total. Considering the races we've had, we've just come off the back of a 3-hour race. That's going to fly by.
Absolutely. These drivers, this is the shortest race of the entire lot. The most important one is going to be the shortest, and that's a big factor, I think, because they haven't really had to do anything like this. Of course, in our race number 5, we did have a red flag situation, and they had a little bit of an experience with the sprint race format, but otherwise, this is the first race where it's entirely down to pace. There's not as much strategy in this one. It's what team's the quickest, what one makes it work.
Well, it's going to be that that second gap off the start of the race, isn't it? That's going to be a big factor of this race. For some teams, it means they're going to be caught out in no man's land before they've even crossed the line for the first time. But for some teams, it means it's going to put them in a great position to get onto that Le Mans podium and fight for that cash. Bo, as a sim racer, how would you feel being able to step on that Le Mans podium?
Le Mans is one of the biggest events in the world. The history and the heritage behind it is second to none. So to be on that podium would be an unbelievable experience. It's where so many of your idols will have been. Of course, everyone who watches sports car racing has watched Le Mans. To be a part of that history would be absolutely incredible, and I know every other driver here feels that same way.
Yes, they do, and I can tell you now that the drivers are sat in the rigs ready to go. So let's get this race underway. I believe we are going to head back over to get the race started. There you can see the countdown, so we wait to get the final race underway, and Baguette Racing will kick us off. And Baguette Racing will now run to their rig, and we have to wait 7 seconds to get Kitty Crew. They will now jump in. A further 4 seconds, then we go back to MAD. Now they go in. Veloci, a further 4 seconds back, and they will be going in. Then Williams Esports will quickly be following them as well. And then we'll have a bit of a long wait for Keep It Simple, Mighty 38, and Wildcats. They'll be at 27 seconds. 27 seconds there. They go. 2 seconds back. There's Tyrewall now going off at 29 seconds. Then we go to 38 seconds, and that will be CMP. They'll be followed by Advocatus and SMP. So this is the situation. The Le Mans start getting us underway. We are racing for the final time this weekend in the Le Mans Esports Series Super Final. And there we can see Wildcats trying to battle away as we get to 50 seconds. That's going to be SMP Racing, our final team, getting underway. And we are now all underway racing. Let's pick up who is where, because we did have some close battles. We had 3 teams setting off at 27 seconds, which was Keep It Simple, Mighty 38 and Wildcats, and they certainly were 2 teams that were battling away. But here is Kitty Crew we just saw, and here's that 3-car battle we just mentioned.
Yeah, absolutely, and this is going to be very, very important. How do these guys work with each other? That's what they need to do, though. They have to work with each other. If they fight each other, they have no hope of catching Baguette, because Baguette are all by themselves, no slipstream for that all-French team. If those guys can work together, use the slipstream off each other, just bring each other forward, there's every chance they can take it to them.
That's a really good point, isn't it? Because I wonder if teams have actually spoken before the race to go, let's work together. We're going to be 11 seconds behind, whatever it is. We need to work together. The big cash is up the road.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, every team is out there for that $25,000 themselves, absolutely. But in order to get it, you have to work together with some other teams. And we're not seeing much side-by-side racing at the moment. So I think the drivers and the teams have all sort of come to that exact conclusion that they need to start hunting the drivers down. You can see the gap there between first and second was around 1,000 foot at that point in time. We'll monitor that gap as the laps go on, but it's very important to see just how it fluctuates.
Well, look at that track map to the left of your screen. Have you ever seen a Le Mans start which was had such a spread going down the Mulsanne Straight so early on? That is because over 8 races, those gaps have been set. Each team has earned the right to get that exact gap over the rest of the field and over the rest of their competitors, and now they have to take advantage of it as we head down towards Mulsanne Corner. Here we go back to look at Tyre Wall Racing, I think that is. So Tyre Wall Racing in the number 42 car. Tyre Wall Racing set off 29 seconds behind our leaders, Baguette Racing. There is Keep It Simple. Now Keep It Simple were in the Mighty 38 Wildcats battle. They all got set off at the same time. But it seems as if the Le Mans start was negotiated the slowest from the Keep It Simple team, because they seem to have dropped to the back of that queue.
Yeah, absolutely, and there's a lot of moving and shuffling around at the moment in this field as well with drivers, because a lot of the teams are actually not starting with their so-called fastest driver. The only one I would probably say at the moment is Veloce Esports. They've moved up to 3rd already, so a fantastic start from them, because I believe they started from the 5th spot.
Oh, we've got someone off. Is that 2nd place off? Is it? Well, that was just ahead of Keep It Simple, sorry. So that was 8th place Tyre Wall who went off there. And Tyre Wall now going to lose a place, are they? Keep It Simple diving down the inside at Arnage on the exit. Keep It Simple are going to tuck back in behind Tyre Wall Racing. So, well, Tyre Wall can breathe a sigh of relief. But, well, they had a big gap to the leaders already. Now it's going to drop back even further. They fall even further behind the cash prizes and a race lead as well.
Yeah, that's really hurt their result or chances of any kind of good result. So that's not what they would have wanted. You can see they're actually running a little bit wide there. But this is a very good comparison of BMW versus Porsche. We've heard about this leading up to the race, that the Porsche perhaps wasn't the car to have and the BMW was. And you could see already through that Porsche curves the BMW already pulling away.
Well, let's get the full order for you when they come across the line. It looks like, well, there you can see Keep It Simple down to 9th place. They were briefly up to 8th. They're now down to 9th. Paul Arivalo in the car for them. So Baguette Racing leading the way by just under 4 seconds from 2nd place Kitty Crew as they go across the line for the first time. So Baguette Racing still leading, but their advantage is not as much as it was when they set off for the Le Mans start. So Kitty Crew, who we go on board with now, have done a very good job on this first lap. They're hunting down Baguette Racing. 12,500 to add what they already have for them at the moment. But if you look up in the distance, there is Baguette Racing. There is the top step of the Le Mans podium, and there is an extra $25,000.
Yeah, that is a massive moment there in front of Raceboy 77, Evan Thorogood, doing an amazing job at the moment, really reeling that gap in. Of course, we knew it was a 7-second margin over 2nd place. It's down to 4 already. 3 seconds in a single lap is a monster margin. So the pressure is on already on Baguette Racing, but they have saved their weapon, and the fastest driver in that team not in the car currently.
Well, there we go. That might make a little bit of a difference, but let's not forget all the drivers we've got here are very quick, but it is a good point that Bo just picked up on there. Now, both our 2 leaders in the same car. They are in the BMW. In the Porsche, we have Keep It Simple, MAD and Advocatus. SMP in the Ferrari. Other than that, everyone else in the preferred BMW, which was the most expensive car in this class because it is the quickest car. We are on board with Kitty Crew then, and it looks like they're getting even closer now to Baguette Racing as we come out of the second chicane. And I think if Baguette Racing were to look in their mirrors at this stage, they would see a small Kitty Crew car off in the distance, and that might just get them a little bit nervous out front.
Absolutely, you can already see on the telemetry at the top of the screen that it's already come down by 1.2 seconds on this half a lap alone. So if I was in that Baguette Racing team, I'd be a little bit worried unless Kitty Crew's going to run a little bit wide into Mulsanne corner. So that might open it up a little bit more, give a bit more breathing room to the all-French team. But the fact is, Raceboy 77, he is closing.
Well, there you go. You said mention about putting a real quick driver in at the start here. They've got to close that gap, so I guess for them that was the best thing to do. If we can get to the race leaders, Baguette Racing, then whoever's in the car, we can stay with them.
Absolutely, and that's a brilliant strategy, and that's what I was saying pre-race, is that you have to chop and choose when you put your fastest driver in the car. And the top two teams have gone for entirely different strategies, and that's exactly what we wanted for this finale. There's so many different ways you can go about endurance racing. Like Alan McNish said, it's about being adaptable and changing to the conditions that are presented to you, and at the moment, that's what we're seeing.
Yeah, definitely inspired driving here after Alan McNish, of course, briefed the drivers before the race, and it was a real pleasure to have him in the arena. We've had some incredible VIP guests over the weekend, and that was just another one in Alan McNish. All supporters of the Le Mans Esports Series, all supporters of esports in general, and all enjoying the racing, realising that this is the perhaps the future of the sport as well as time changes. Now Baguette Racing, 2.7 seconds is the gap back to Kitty Crew. It's stabilised on this lap, but Kitty Crew seem to be quicker through the first half of the lap than what we've seen over the first two laps. But
yeah, absolutely. It does look like Evan is just managing to just chip away little bit by little bit there, and you can see in particular there's just a lot more confidence in the slow speed corners, I think, is where the gain is happening for the Kitty Crew at the moment. So we'll see what the gap is as they cross the start finish line. It was 2.7 at the Porsche curbs across the finish line. It's still 2.7, so very evenly matched across the back half of the circuit. But how does it reflect in overall lap times and over the rest of this race? It's hard to say because there's still 22 long laps to go.
And looking at the gaps we have, of course, some fairly large. In this modern GTE class, in your experience of driving GT class cars around, say, the Le Mans circuit, do you tend to get drivers closer than they might usually be in terms of times, or is there a spread because of how the car handles and how difficult it might be to drive?
Yeah, GT racing is a bit unique in the fact that every car has its strengths and weaknesses, and that different tracks will benefit different cars. And I definitely believe that on this track it is going to be a BMW circuit, as you can see some action there as we're currently on board there, and you can see a pass being made. So Wildcat get demoted by a spot by the mighty 38, who move up into 6th, and more importantly, the last spot that earns $1,000 in this race. So this is a very, very nice battle. Now we've got the Mad Motorsports car. They're in the Porsche, which is apparently the weaker car. So out of nowhere, this could potentially be a brilliant move for the drivers in 6th place at the moment for Mighty 38, who have gone from no money to being in 5th place, and they're in a $2,000 money slot, and they're going to have the driver behind in the Wildcat car going to go along for the ride. So the Mad Motorsports Porsche just going backwards at the moment.
Yeah, it's what they expected, but Mad Motorsports are going to have to try and put up a fight here in this final race of the weekend. We've had some driver changes, I think, already, as well as Wildcats go diving down the inside into the first chicane. It looks like we've definitely had some contact, because going off the circuit there was Mighty 38. They rejoin now, and Mighty 38 have lost out in all of that. They were caught on the outside, appeared they just had nowhere else to go but on the inside of the corner to take avoiding action.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a very aggressive move, probably one that wasn't quite going to pay off, and they had to take avoiding action or just dived across to avoid contact. Either way, I don't think the stewards will really look at that all too much. Should be race on and a game on to the checkered flag.
Yeah, well, let's hope we have a clean race all the way through. I know there's a lot up for grabs, but if we can keep it clean, that would be absolutely perfect to top off what has been a fantastic event. Now, the gap between the two leaders, just to keep you updated, is stable at 2.6 seconds. As I say that, it has just changed. Just as we switch the graphic there, it's gone down to 1.7 seconds. So in the space of a few seconds, clearly through a corner, Kitty Crew have either there was a mistake made from Baguette Racing, or Kitty Crew are just absolutely flying. perhaps a mixture of both, because Kitty Crew only 1.7 seconds back now from Baguette Racing, who are definitely going to be feeling the pressure. There is Kitty Crew, Baguette Racing just ahead. They are the all-French driver lineup we have here at Le Mans, and as the crowds file in and visit us in the arena, that's the team perhaps a chunk of them are going to be cheering for.
Yeah, absolutely, and there's a lot to watch out for here at the moment, of course, because there are no minimum driver times required in this race. You just have to use all 3 drivers. So in theory, the French team of the race leaders at the moment could actually find themselves coming to the pits early, get their quicker driver in to try and rebuild that lead, but I'm not sure they'll do that. They'll try and stick it out, but if the team in second place at the moment can find their way within 1.2 seconds, that's when you start to pick up a slipstream.
Right, so that's crucial to know. So half a second to go before we get the slipstream, and we are not far away from the Mulsanne Straight. We're going down towards the Ford chicanes now. We'll get an update on that gap when they cross the line, and if Kitty Crew are 1.2 seconds or less back from the leaders, then we may even see a chance of a change for the lead on the next lap. So this is starting to become even more interesting, this race. It is 1.5, so it's coming down slowly. Veloci have gone up to third. I think we've had more teams perhaps coming into the pits early on. We'll try and keep up to date as best as we can with that. Of course, they're all going to have to stop twice in this race, with all drivers needing to go in. And Kitty Crew, we can see they're still 1.5 back, 1.6. So Baguette Racing actually doing a really good job here just to keep a gap to second place.
Very curiously, last lap around, Veloci Esports set the fastest lap of the race by 1.6 seconds over Baguette Racing at the moment. So 1.6 seconds are quicker of Veloci Esports than your race leader at the moment. Of course, they've got an 8-second hurdle to overhaul across this 24-lap race, but at that rate, of course they can do it.
Well, this is only lap number 4 of 24. This a 90-minute race, so this is the shortest race that we have had so far through the super final, and we have all drivers going in, which means for each driver this is their shortest stint and their last stint as well of the entire event. So they have to give it everything. How hard must it be with the how tired they must be at this stage, Bo, going through the fatigue levels and now in their last stint having to give it everything. How do you do that as a driver?
It must be so mentally tough for a driver, and that's where this is going to be coming from. It's going to be all mental. It's a driver being able to push themselves beyond a limit they've never done, because a lot of these drivers have never done a race longer than 3 hours. They're coming off the back of a 24-hour race, and they've been thrown into a 24-lap sprint at qualifying pace, which they know there is so much on the line as well. So this all just comes down to mental strength and being able to focus on the job at hand, ignore the distractions, and just focus on the task at hand.
Well, here we are with Mighty 38 at the moment. Mighty 38 haven't picked up any cash so far throughout the event. Of course, well, Mighty 38 are the team down to 2 drivers, with one of their drivers not being able to make it. So Mighty 38, this could be a great opportunity for them to change that. All they have to do is get inside the top 6. At the moment, they are in 6th place, which would mean they would take home $1,000. But they are looking very, very quick. They're in the BMW as well to make things even better for them in this race. And Mighty 38 now chasing down Wildcats in 5th place here. So this is an interesting battle developing.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And you can see they were just closing a little bit there, especially down the Mulsanne Straight. So maybe they've just got a little bit less wing angle or a little bit less downforce on that setup of theirs. So they're able to just claw that gap up a little bit more than the other BMW, because of course there's no upgrades allowed on the car at all. They can't change anything in terms of performance of the car, purely setup only. So it must be just fine little details.
So just tell us how much they would be changing in the setups here over the weekend. Tell us what things we could look out for in terms of setups.
Yeah, well, in particular in these GTE cars, there's not much you can't change essentially. So there'd be downforce levels, spring rate changes, and also like stuff like ride heights. And whilst ride heights might not sound like much because it's not a particularly bumpy circuit, you want that car to be as low as possible, get as little drag over the car as possible, minimize the rake so you have the rear of the car down, better airflow of the rear of the car as well. So lots of minute little changes you can do, even like pumping up the tyres to the highest pressure you can, less rolling resistance from the tyre. It just helps little details to make the car go faster.
and that's just one race. Imagine having to repeat that same process, finding that best setup that you've been talking about there for all of those things 9 times over. It's been a very tiring event for these guys. They've had a lot of practice to do as well before we got to this point, but now we are here, we are at the end, the finish line is in sight, and Baguette Racing leading the way. We look back from them at the moment with the Kitty Crew team, just chasing in second place at the moment. So still the same in terms of the leaders. Baguette Racing from Kitty Crew and Veloce in third, Williams in fourth. Then we have Wildcats in fifth place at the moment. A 30-second spread between our top 5. And I tell you what, that's not really changed much when you consider that the top 5 was set off at around just under 20 seconds. It's not really a huge change that we've had.
No, not at all. But the thing is, our top 3 have all managed to close in on each other, because Veloce Esports started a fair way behind, I believe over 10 seconds at least behind your pole sitters, and they're now within 7 seconds. So they're making a charge, so is your second place team. So there's a lot going on in that mid-pack, and there's also battles happening down here as we have the Tire Wall racing car. We've got Aaron Pilkington, a very familiar name in the Forza scene, also better known as Mellish, and he's applying a lot of pressure to the Porsche in front at the moment. And we'll see what he can do, as it's going to be all too easy into the Dunlop curve there, and didn't even really need to attack all too much. That moves them up another spot, but it's only position number 10 at the moment as they get past Advocates.
It was even hard to make that one sound exciting, wasn't it? Just breezed past like he got into the fast lane on the motorway. You picked up a very good point there for Veloce. They've basically taken 8 seconds out of the leader. We are only 5 laps into this race. They are now 7 seconds behind, so make that 6.1 seconds behind. So they are absolutely flying the Veloce team. That means that they've now closed in by, 8 seconds, 9 seconds even, and we're only on lap number 5, so fantastic driving this so early on.
Yeah, it is fantastic driving, but the issue is they've got James Baldwin in the car, who is arguably their gun driver. So, as we have drama there, as that's the Kitty car, so all of a sudden your second place car, which was applying pressure to your race leader, Baguette Racing,
and there comes Veloce.
has gone down, and there's Veloce. So out of nowhere, Veloce Esports have found themselves in position number 2. This is all changing at the front. So Veloce go to $12,500 of prize money at this point in time. And we'll see what happens here, because this could be potentially a bit of a fight.
Well, Kitty Crew there dropping to third place, it seems, as going up to second place. Then are Veloce. We're going to get ready to head down to Bryn very shortly, who is down there trying to catch up with some of our drivers. So I think Bryn is ready to go. Bryn, over to you.
Indeed, I'm with the team for Kitty Crew right now, who are watching on, and it was a major bit of drama there for them. It was looking quite nice, but that's not the kind of driving you need when it comes to the super final.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but it's not over for us. Yes, there's still a podium on the cards, and I'm confident that Evan can regroup and get it done.
Is that to do with focus, to do with composure, the fact you've been awake for so long?
This is one of the biggest events this year, one of the biggest events we've ever done. Obviously, the pressure is massive for us to perform, and I think, unfortunately, it got to Evan a little bit there.
But it's not all is lost. You're currently in second place, and not too far back. You're a bit of a way, but you could make it up. And if you just joined us, if you just wandered in here to the Le Mans Esports Series Arena, or you've just tuned in online, they're wondering what is going on. This is the super final, $25,000 up for grabs for the race winner. We've got top 6 having money prizes, but also the top 3 go onto the podium here at Le Mans. This has been 24 hours of competition. Back to you, Chris.
It's heating up for second place. We were side by side all the way through the 4 chicanes after their spin earlier at the Mulsanne chicane. Kitty Crew are now down into third place. Our leaders are in a comfortable lead in Baguette Racing, and we have a new second place team in Veloce. So a rare mistake there from the Kitty Crew team at such an important time as well, but Veloce have helped themselves to that second place. Kitty Crew now down to third place. All good news this for Baguette Racing out in the lead.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to say, whilst it's good news for Veloce Esports, they move up 1 spot, it's bad news in the fact that Baguette Racing have managed to extend that margin considerably more. So they've now extended that lead out to 9 seconds, and that's going to be pretty tough to catch. but Veloce Esports have the quickest lap of the race by 0.8 of a second over Baguette Racing. It's not over yet.
Well, that's an important one to know, isn't it? Because 6 laps of 24 is where we are at the moment. And I tell you what, if you're Kitty Crew now, you would have seen the gap from Veloce closing down. Just sit in behind perhaps and try and work with Veloce here, and you might both go and catch Baguette Racing over the next portion of the race.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the smartest call there. Don't fight each other, just let each other work together. And even if the car behind it, the Kitty Crew car, is able to just basically draft up to the Veloce Esports car and almost bump draft them, just to do anything to get themselves closer to the Baguette Racing team, it'll all help. And we could have one awesome showdown all the way to the checkered flag.
Well, we're concentrating on this battle for second. Of course, we've got Baguette Racing from Veloce, Kitty Crew. Williams are in 4th place at the moment, so they're going along very well, as are Wildcats in 5th, Mighty 38 in 6th. Then it's CNP, Let's Keep It Simple. Then it's MAD, Tirewall, Advocatus are 11th, and SMP are rounding out the field at the moment as we look at Veloce Esports, our 2nd place team coming into Mulsanne Corner. That gap is coming down even further. It's now down to 7.6 seconds between 1st and 2nd, and that might sound like a big gap at the moment, but this is a long race and we are only on lap number 6 of 24, I remind you. So this a gap we'll have to monitor over the next hour or so. Veloce are not prepared to give up this fight for the lead. They are going to take the advice of Alan McNish, and they are going to be pushing all the way to that checkered flag.
Yeah, and they should be, because there are so many factors still left in this race. We haven't even spoken about pit stops really yet, and the time that you can gain in pit stops as well. So there's a lot of factors that are going on at the moment, and there's a lot that can potentially be changed, because I imagine Baguette Racing will be one of the first cars to pit, try and get another one of their drivers in the car. I reckon Veloce will try and leave James out as long as they can.
I think they will. And let's talk about pit stops. You just brought that up there about being able to make time. Is that in the strategy that they're going to be able to do that?
Yes, there'll be a little bit of a strategy, and also be how you attack pit entry, because of course we know Le Mans has a pretty unique pit entry with the double chicanes, and if you're able to attack that a little bit better than the car in front of you, it's time gained. So although these are only micro tenths, we all know racing is about those micro tenths.
And is that something you as yourself say as a sim racer and other sim racers, is that something that you will practice, just pit entries and doing them as quickly as possible?
The best teams will. The teams that are trying to get every little margin out of their car will be. It's something that's very easy to forget to practice especially, but for a team as professional as Veloce Esports, I don't doubt they've already done it.
Well, that's a great insight there from Bo next to me, and Veloce Esports. They are just trying to chase down Baguette Racing. That is the situation in terms of our leaders, but here is a good little fight going on a little bit further down the field. I think it's MAD Motorsport leading this one from Tirewall. Tirewall looking to the outside down at Arnage, and they're going to have to tuck in behind going down towards the Porsche curves. MAD Motorsport gave them the space, but just looked like Tirewall weren't able to get the run out of the corner, but they are able to get the run a little bit further down the straight, optimizing the slipstream, and Tirewall now take that position going up towards Porsche curves.
Yeah, that was a pretty simple move there, just using the BMW strengths and using the Porsche's weaknesses as well as they fire into the Porsche curves. So not the best of times for any of the Porsche drivers. You can see a general trend of all of them, including Keep It Simple, Mad, and of course Advocatus as well, all falling back in the order, so not the ideal way for them. And of course the SMP Racing Ferrari is falling back as well, so BMW is the car to have, but you can still see margins constantly changing.
And we got lots of visitors in the arena, and we got an interesting new one as well from the World Endurance Championship coming to watch the racing. That is someone who is getting in the zone there, and I'm not sure if we're going to be able to get the mascot in the rig there. It's a pretty big crash helmet, isn't it? But there we go. He's just coming along to check on how everyone is doing. I wonder if he's going to be picking up any racing lines or any tactics to use at some stage. Who knows? But great to have the World Endurance Championship mascot here with us to enjoy the racing. And I hope you all are enjoying the racing. If you are, make sure you get in touch via Le Mans Esports. Tweet us, let us know how you are enjoying the racing. Who do you think's going to win this one? Is it going to be Baguette Racing? Are they going to win on home soil? Are those 3 French drivers going to fulfill their dreams and stand on that Le Mans podium? Or are we going to have Veloci spoil their dreams and go on to take what would be a very, very famous victory if they can go and close down the gap that they have ahead of them? What about Kitty Crew? Are they playing their tactics absolutely perfectly by sitting in behind in 3rd place? Let us know at Le Mans Esports and tell us how you're enjoying the coverage as well. And why not tell us who you think's going to win the 24-hour Le Mans while you're at it?
Yeah, absolutely. It'd be great to see what everyone's thoughts and predictions are on this event, as it is only 7 laps into 24, so not even a third of the way in yet. But of course, it is going by very quickly. It is a sprint race in essence to all the others. But my worry at the moment for Kitty Crew is it's already about a second gap to the Veloci Esports car in front. They're not sticking to them as well as I thought they might have.
Well, we were just reaching out to our audience there to get predictions. I've got to ask yourself, Bo, experienced in esports, what are your predictions at this stage? How do you see this race going? You know, I'm not going to ask you to pick a winner for certain, but in your experience, how do you think that this one's going to pan out?
Right now, I think Baguette Racing is in an extremely strong position. They've got a 6-second lead, and they've still got a Rullian Mallet to put in the car, who we expect at least to be in the car for the longest amount of time. So I think they're in a very strong position, but you know, we saw Kitty Crew make a mistake. Who says that can't happen to the French team either? So
shall we say it's Baguette Racing's race to lose, basically?
I would say at this point in time, absolutely, because Veloci Esports are quick, but I don't know if they've got the consistent enough pace to reel it in the 24 laps we have.
Well, we're waiting to see some of our leaders come into the pits, which they have to do so twice. All drivers have to go into the car during this final race. Some of them, of course, they would have been taking all kind of different shifts with going to try and get some sleep. So some would have been up for a bit longer than others at this stage, but now they all have to try and recoup their energy and all be fresh, ready for this last race.
That was one of the really big talking points during the night, was just how teams were approaching their different sleeping schedules. And for some teams, sleeping schedules weren't even on the agenda. They just were all staying up 24/7. And there was a bit of a surprise there and a bit of a shock there as to who was doing that. But nonetheless, you know, those teams that have managed to do that, they're still performing well at the moment. So all is looking well for them.
Yeah, forget pit strategies, it's sleep strategies as well, isn't it? That can win the Le Mans Esports Series clearly. Here we can see then going on to the Mulsanne Straight. Veloci currently 6.1 seconds behind our leaders. Things getting ever closer here in the Super Final. Let's head down to the arena though to see what Bryn is finding out.
Thanks, Chris. I was just talking to the guys from Baguette Racing. Obviously, they're leading the way, so you'd imagine they'd be really happy, wouldn't you? But they are not. And the reason they're not all that happy is they're struggling with their braking zones. They've got the braking zone markings on when they're racing, okay? And you can't see it on a big screen here on the TV playback, but they have it there. But they're struggling with the braking points. Apparently, the braking points are telling them to brake later than they need to. And it's really hard when you're racing if you're trying to play to the braking lines and ignore them when you've got a big red or yellow arrow on the road in front. So they're having to adapt as it goes and readdress their braking points when apparently on the screen they should be braking at a completely different part on the track.
Not particularly, no. I personally drive without the driving line on at all, and I do wonder for the teams that aren't using the driving lines today if they've almost got an advantage now, because I wasn't aware of that little issue that can sometimes pop up there with that driving line. So for the teams that perhaps aren't running that, you know, maybe there's an advantage. They're not getting distracted. And for Baguette Racing, maybe that's something that could prove to be a little bit of an issue later in the race.
And is this something Baguette Racing can fix during the race, or is this it now? Do they have to deal with this for the entire race?
They would be able to fix it at some point, but it would have to be during a pit stop. So right now, for this first stint, they're absolutely stuck with it.
Well, let's we'll try and get a look at exactly what Baguette Racing are experiencing, but a strange problem. This is exactly the kind of things, though, you see in the 24-hour of Le Mans, and this is why we're doing this event the way we are, because when we get to that final hour or so and everything is looking A-OK, all of a sudden a problem comes up which perhaps you can't fix, and guess what, as a driver you just got to try and get around it the best you can.
Yeah, absolutely, and we've seen that so many times that there have been little mechanical faults or little electrical gremlins even that have really hindered a driver's race, whether it's the radio cut out, or if you're a Toyota driver, maybe the car stops working with 3 minutes to go. It's just the history of Le Mans. It's just these things do happen. And I don't want to use the cliche saying, but sometimes it's just racing.
It is, and I'm sure any driver that has won Le Mans, like Alan, who was with us earlier, Alan McNish, to speak to the drivers before the race got underway, they've all experienced it. They've probably all won with having issues throughout race. It's never going to be a comfortable ride to the end in a 24-hour race like this. And but I'm not sure if you've done an event like a 24-hour esports event, but if you have, can you tell us what it's like?
Yeah, so I compete actually quite regularly in 24-hour races, and I can tell you it is a very, very tough challenge. And these drivers will be going through quite a lot right now, just trying to keep your focus for such a long period of time. And we'll quickly turn to this because we have Kitty Crew coming into the pits. And Evan Thorogood, of course, Raceboy77, who is one of the best drivers on that team, has decided to call it a day for this first race, number 9. And it's going to be interesting to see who they do indeed chuck into the car, because it's a very talented lineup. I would say Kitty Crew are probably one of the best all-round average teams. There's not really a weak link.
You know, Kitty Crew, what did you make of the entrance into the pit lane? They looked pretty quick, took all their apexes as well, and I think that highlighted what you were saying earlier about practicing those entrances into the pit lane.
Yeah, exactly, because drivers are always searching for, you know, a tenth of a second on the track, and it's so hard on the entire, 13 kilometers of Le Mans to find a tenth of a second, but then they forget to practice the pit lane and they lose half a second. So it's just one of those things, if you can practice every little fine detail, it does pay off.
Well, there's Kitty Crew in, so we'll catch up on how things develop around them. Of course, they're right in the fight for the top positions. Here we can see Baguette Racing's screen. So this is what they are seeing, the drivers who will be in the rig. Hopefully we'll just get a little bit of a view of that. Can you see how that might be a distraction? We'll have a look. We'll hang with it until we get to Mulsanne Corner, but you seem to spot it straight away.
Yeah, absolutely. So basically they've got the racing line turned on for corners only, but when they're actually approaching into the corner, it's telling them to brake about 200 meters early almost, what it looked like into that first chicane. So we'll see if it is the same issue into the second Mulsanne chicane. And see, they're going through telemetry, actually a good insight into their tyres there. So this is all well and good, but it's already beginning to fade almost into a yellow and hard on the brakes. And you can see they're only on the brakes now. So it's a bit of a distraction there. I don't think it's going to be hurting them all too much, but, focus is so critical in a race of this pressure, and these small little details can be enough to just throw you off your game.
Well, it's like having 5 stop signs in the same bit of road and wondering which one you actually stop at, isn't it? It's a really tough situation for Baguette Racing to be in here, but I think they are dealing with it very well. And another tough thing we have, the drivers don't have radio, so I imagine when that problem occurred, driver in the rig was somehow having to get that communicated to the team, and they're trying to, I imagine, communicate back to fix a solution. So this is a really difficult thing in esports, isn't it? Trying to fix a problem like this.
Yeah, absolutely, and that could be something they're just trying to communicate via hand gestures or something like that. So we'll have to wait and see how that all pans out for those French drivers. But it's going to be very, very challenging to deal with the rest of the stint.
Well, let's see where Kitty Crew came out. They came out in 5th, so we'll keep an eye on how the likes of Veloci compare to that when they decide to come into the pits. Williams, of course, are 3rd, Mighty 38 going up to 4th, so Kitty Crew down to 5th. Now, let's check in with the gap, because there is your race leader, Baguette Racing. The all-French driver lineup leading the way at the moment, and if they finish where they are, they'll take that $25,000 on top of what they already have won, which is quite a few thousand as well, and they get to go on that Le Mans podium, and it's something I'll only be able to dream of doing. I know I won't be able to ever make it onto that, but these guys get the chance through such a fantastic esports event, and the gap is 4 seconds.
Yeah, so they're closing very rapidly, but I do believe Bryn is down on the floor with the driver.
Thanks very much there to Chris. So I'm just catching up with Kitty Crew. Evan is here, and I tell you, that was it was an interesting first stint. It was going okay, but there were a couple of wobbly moments for you.
Yeah, I had a really good pace early on, and I was catching up, and then I made a horrible mistake. I broke a little bit early trying not to contact the car in front of me, and then I just ended up going too slow in the corner and just catching the tire wall on the inside. Luckily I was able to stay with Veloce, but that was awful.
Well, it wasn't too bad. I mean, you're fifth at the moment, so I know you want to be further up the road at this stage, but fifth isn't all that bad, and there are pit stops galore going to be happening through this. We call it a sprint race, but it's far from a sprint race. How are you finding it? Is it fatigue? Is it the pressure? Because, of course, there's a lot of money up for grabs as well.
Yeah, I don't really feel the pressure. It was just a silly mistake that happens sometimes. A lot of people do it. It just depends when you do it, and now is the worst time, obviously. I know I could have been first after my stint. I think I could have taken the lead pretty easy, but unfortunately not. We're fifth right now, and hopefully when the pit cycle over, we'll be second or third.
Well, look, don't beat yourself up too much, but it just goes to prove, doesn't it really, when we're talking about esports, there's many people that are new to this, might be thinking that esports, look, it's just people and games. It is about people. It's about motorsport in this case. There are very real people behind the mistakes, and they feel it like anybody would in competition.
We were down with Bryn there. We had some pit stops being made from our two race leaders. So Baguette Racing have come in for their first driver change, and also coming in were Veloce as well. You can see James Baldwin just walking away there. He's put in a fantastic shift as James Baldwin. But what's the state of play then? Now we've had these stops. It doesn't look like there was a huge amount of difference. I think perhaps the only one would have been Veloce pulling away, getting a little bit more of a gap over Kitty Crew, who we're seeing now in third place. So Veloce, who were under a little bit of pressure in second, have a bit of a gap now. Let's see, it's around, I think it's a good few seconds. We'll have to get the gaps when they come up on screen for us, but certainly we can see Kitty Crew, but we can't see Veloce.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's also interesting to see who they've actually put in their car, because of course Baguette Racing gone for their absolute gun, Aurelian Mallet, one of the quickest drivers as well, and the gaps have expanded just a little bit as well between a few of the teams, of course, because Kitty Crew did end up putting Felipe Roberto in the car as well, as we now look at Veloce Esports now with Noah Schmitz in the car. So lots of driver changes happening. Of course, this is the race where they have to use all three drivers, so they have to figure out where they put them in at the moment. Looks like these teams are going for an 8-stint split between all three drivers.
Now we had Bryn down there on the floor talking, catching up with some of the teams. We talked about Aurelian Mallet going into the car for Baguette Racing. Noah Schmitz is in for Veloce. How do these two drivers compare? Do you know much about the two drivers, and maybe how their styles differ?
Yeah, so obviously Aurelian's got a very good Forza background, so he's going to be the quick guy. He's probably the benchmark driver at this entire tournament, so expect him to probably pull away from Veloce Virus, as he is known, just a little bit. But for Virus, he'll still be able to keep calm, he'll still be able to keep cool, and his job at the moment, I think, will just be to maintain the gap to second place and just do whatever he can with Aurelian.
And I think Veloce would have just accepted a challenge there from yourself. We think that Baguette Racing might be able to pull away with the driver lineups we got in, but we are at the end of 24 hours. I mean, we're talking about these drivers pound for pound. If they were both going in fresh for a first race of the day, they are very fatigued, are the drivers, and that might mean that there is some differences in performance.
Yeah, well, this is something we don't normally talk about, because out of nowhere, this brings in the aspect of what is the driver's physical strength, what is the driver's mental strength, what are they actually capable of, what is their cardiovascular health like. It's a very interesting thing, and it is the direction esports is going, where you do need to actually be in shape for these events. So you do start seeing these drivers start training, and I know there have been drivers here that have been training actually in gyms prior to this event, just so they can prepare for this challenge.
Well, there's lots of challenges for them to take on, as well as, of course, we're in the GTE class around Le Mans. We've got to think of all the other stuff as well that comes with racing in a 24-hour event, particularly one this competitive with this much on the line as well. Veloce, of course, a big esports team within the community. Another team that is starting to pick up some momentum is SMP Racing, and they are running a little bit of a competition at the moment. Here's some more details about it.
Well, the commentators were just talking about fatigue and how the drivers are coping. It has been a really, really long event. 19 hours, we're probably 19 and a half hours in terms of competition time over a 24-hour period. I'm currently with Mighty 38, and David is here. And they have a team of 2, not a team of 3, due to just unfortunate circumstances, but they're a team of 2, and that means we've had to adjust the amount of time they can spend in the seat. 12 hours is the maximum. But because of the way it works, that means David has been sitting in the seat there for around, I think it was 9 or 10 hours, wasn't it, that you did back-to-back?
Yeah, I did about 9 hours while Chris was getting some rest. So that was a pretty brutal stint, but I felt like I had some pretty good runs, had some free runs. So.
Yeah, I mean, it was brutal, but looking at the results there that you picked up 2 fifths and a 6th. So it didn't seem to be that brutal. I know you were struggling, but you were really in the zone, weren't you? Did it help that you didn't have to down tools at any moment?
Yeah, once I got in the groove, it was a little bit easier because I was just in the seat the entire time. So I didn't really have to get to like hop out of the car and then get back used to it again. Just a little bit disappointed in the Sebring race because we had really good pace, but there was a mistake at the beginning which cost us a lot of time. But if that hadn't happened, we had the pace to run at the front.
But of course, as well, you were doing 3 different circuits with 3 different types of cars. That makes it even harder. But I'm going to leave you to watch this now. Do you know when you're going to be getting in the rig?
Chris will be running the tank out, and then I'll be hopping in to finish.
Because you have to do 2 changes or at least 2 pit stops, don't you? I'll leave that with you just there. But it is quite remarkable how they're doing. And at the moment, whisper it quietly, the team of 2 with 2 absolutely phenomenal drivers are working very hard, huge amount of seat time, are currently 5th. I said,
I'll try. Mighty 38, that living up to their name, really. Mighty performance from them so far, with 2 drivers to be in 5th place, as Bryn said. How impressive is that, though?
It's extremely impressive. Before the break, we obviously spoke about physical strength and mental strength. They've got it in absolute spades. That is an amazing effort from both of those guys. And I mean, the results have been good despite how much they've been working so far. So it's an incredible performance from those guys, and full credit to wherever they finish.
Well, let's go back to the leaders because, of course, we've got Mighty 38 in 5th place there, doing a fantastic job. But meanwhile, now there is 2nd place. We might not be nose to tail for the lead. However, that gap at the top of your screen is crucial. It's now 3.8 seconds. Now, when we saw the driver change, the first of 2 driver changes in this race, based off what we know about the 2 drivers out for Baguette Racing and Veloci, we expected maybe Baguette Racing to have a little bit of an advantage. That doesn't really seem to be happening, though. It seems like Veloci are actually doing a pretty good job here to keep a stable gap.
Yeah, absolutely. The gap's only extended by 0.2 of a second, and around Le Mans, that's nothing. So a very impressive job so far by the Veloci Esports crew, and they're managing to hold that pace very, very well. But we don't know how long a ruling melee might be in the car. We don't know what stint lengths might be. So it's very, very interesting to see how this will unfold, especially now that we know that Baguette Racing won't have their strongest driver in at the end.
Well, that's definitely a key note to remember, isn't it? That we don't think they're going to have their fastest driver in at the end. I mean, when we talk about this, fastest drivers in the team, we're talking about fractions, aren't we, in terms of performance and in terms of speed?
Absolutely. Most of these teams are within 0.3 of a second of each other, so it's very minimal details, and often the fastest driver in the team will change depending on what the car is. So how does it suit a driver's driving style? Are they able to work with it a little bit nicer? There's a lot of factors into it, and I think this GT style of car really suits Rulli Mallet. We saw him in qualifying for Spa for round number 7, I believe it was, yesterday, and he was mighty impressive. He put 0.6 of a second on the field.
And of course, we've got the Modern GTE cars, if you'll be able to see, whether you're in our arena or whether you're watching Modern GTEs around Le Mans. We're going to see this, but in real, on the circuit in just a few hours as well. The GTE class, always fantastic to watch in the World Endurance Championship and in Le Mans as well.
Yeah, for me personally, it's actually my favourite class at Le Mans. It's always entertaining. You've got the different manufacturers, the different strengths, weaknesses, and also you've got some pretty entertaining characters in that GT field as well, like Nicky Tim, who is always a hilarious character to be around. So GTE is all around just an amazing class, and if you don't follow it closely, I highly recommend it. It's brilliant stuff.
Yeah, well, just to give you an overview of how manufacturers have done in recent years, Ferrari won the title in 2012 from Porsche and Chevrolet, and then it was them that repeated that process in 2013 with Aston Martin second and Porsche. We've seen a few of them out there. They were in third. Ferrari once again won in 2014 from Porsche and Aston Martin. Porsche then took the title in 2015 from Ferrari and Aston Martin. Then it was back to Ferrari and Ferrari again in 2017. But this season, as we get to the last round of the super season for 2018-19 for the World Endurance Championship, Porsche have pretty much wrapped up the title from Ferrari and Ford. BMW are behind Aston Martin in 5th place. So BMW really up and coming within the GTE class, believe it or not. But Porsche, the dominant force at the moment. You can see on screen Veloce Esports, they are closing in. They have now brought the gap down to less than 3 seconds to our race leaders, and Bryn is catching up with them at the moment.
Yeah, I am indeed. We're on board them, as you can see. I am with James from Veloce Esports, and this is hotting up, isn't it?
I wasn't expecting this. How are we? 700 feet, and we started off 3,100 feet off them.
Ooh. And at the halfway stage. So how are your nerves? How are you all feeling as a team?
I've done my bit, so my nerves are gone. But yeah, I'm really excited though. This is going to be close because I don't think their third driver is as quick as Dave. So it's going to be close.
So do you know when the next change is going to happen? Are you willing to tell us?
No.
Not willing to tell us, or you don't know?
I'll tell you in 20 minutes.
Okay, fair enough. There you go. So in about 20 minutes or so, that's about 4 laps, 5 laps, something like that. So Veloce Esports are saying that they weren't expecting to be so close so quickly, but here they are, just under 4 seconds behind the race leader Baguette, and Kitty are just behind them as well. Bit of a drop back there. Still, looking at this, there's all to play for. Halfway stage, anything can happen.
Well, we're just as surprised up here as they are down there. Veloce, it's a performance that we would expect from Veloce, but we didn't expect it to be this close. Let's not forget, Baguette Racing had a 7-second advantage at the start of the race. They had a 15-second advantage over Veloce. The gap is now 3.7. How do they stop Veloce from catching them?
It's going to be very, very tricky. Veloce clearly have quite a lot of car pace. Of course, Noah not quite able to reel in Aurelian at the moment, but as I've mentioned before, Aurelian's arguably their strongest driver. So if all the Veloce drivers are at this pace, you know, there's every chance that whoever is in last for the Baguette Racing team could be getting closed in on very quickly by a very fast, shiny blue car.
Well, that's what we want. We want a grandstand finish, don't we? But it just goes to show, you know, how talented the guys are and how well they're doing at the moment, because after, you know, they've been awake for 24 hours doing this event, and of course we had qualifying the day before that as well, that even now that it is hard to split Baguette and Veloce. When a gap comes down, it is by a tenth or two, then it will increase again. So they are pretty much matching each other for times here. Veloce are just in that frustrating situation where they can see Baguette Racing, but at the moment they're well out of the tow, so can't do anything about it when they get to the straight.
We just had a perfect illustration there on the actual overlays there that gave us an indication of their pace. The fastest lap of the race at 350.7 by Veloce, and the Baguette Racing team at 350.8. There's 1/10 of a second in it. That is incredible stuff. So Veloce, I mean, 1/10 of a second is all well and good, but not when you have 3 seconds to close. But that's actually a worthwhile point, because that is now down by half a second. So Noah Schmitz, we thought he might, well, I personally thought he might struggle a bit against Aurelian, but he's proven me wrong. He is doing a stunning job, 2.9 seconds.
Well, if you are just joining us and you haven't really seen much of what has happened so far this weekend, we have had 8 races up until this point, which helped set the grid for this 9th and final race. In those 8 races, we were giving out cash prizes, $3,000 to the winners, $2,000 to second place finishers, $1,000 to third place finishers. But in this race, it all changes, and in a huge way, $25,000 goes out to the winner, and the top 3 all go on the Le Mans podium as well. Bryn, it is getting very, very close. We are getting nearer now into the second half of the race, and it is still all to play for.
All to play for, and some. I've just had news that Veloce have had 1 warning for track limit so far, and Baguette Racing are on their second and final warning before they would get a penalty. So that is worth bearing in mind, because if they get a penalty, that's a stop-go, and that could throw everything out, really, couldn't it? But also remember, because Baguette Racing are a purely French team, we're on French soil, you touched on it earlier, Chris, nothing about nothing they want more than standing on the top step of the podium here at Le Mans. So the pressure they're putting on themselves is absolutely fantastic. Whenever you talk to them, you'd expect them to be upbeat, but they are feeling it. You can really see they are very, very tense.
Nothing less than first will do for Baguette Racing in this event. Even standing second on the Le Mans podium is not going to be good enough for them. Now, we had that news from Bryn that Veloce had picked up a track limits warning. When you get fed that information as a driver, especially in a situation like this, what do? Do you change your approach now? It's hard, isn't it? Because they can't start pushing less, because then they're just going to lose time and they're not going to close in and potentially take a race win. So what do?
Well, it's the second part of Bryn's message that I found most interesting. So with Veloce, they've got a single penalty, a single warning at the moment. I would not change my approach. Keep attacking and just make sure you just try and tidy it up just a tiny little bit. Baguette Racing, they're on their second and final warning before a stop-go penalty. At that point, you've got no choice but to change your approach. You've got to make sure you're careful, because even if you make a little mistake and go wide, you've got a penalty, a stop-go. The minimum stop-go penalty they will do is 5 seconds. It's only a 2.5 second lead, so that is already gone, your race lead. So, and with the pace Veloce Esports have at the moment, they have to be so careful right now.
And not only that, you would drop second if you were Veloce. Sorry, you would drop down to, say, third place, but you could go down even further as well if it came into a 5 second stop-go penalty, because you probably lose around 15 to 20 seconds overall with having to slow down out of the forward chicane and then get back up to speed again. We haven't really talked much about some of the guys down the field for a while, and we had Mighty 38 on screen there. There you can see Veloce working away at the wheel at the moment, but this is Mighty 38 battling away with Wildcats Williams in that as well. So a good three-way battle going on here between teams who have all featured very well at one stage. Williams, of course, they had a best result of a second. The Wildcats have had a second as well back in race number 6. So Mighty 38, of course, unfortunately no cash for them at the moment, but they have had a string of 5th place finishes. In the recent run of races, they have had 2 5ths and a 6th. So they're ending this 24-hour very strong.
Yeah, they absolutely are. And there's so many different drivers as well, and there's so many different teams that can do so well. But we're just taking a bit of a moment here as Williams Esports do go a little bit too deep into that first Mulsanne chicane. That's going to open the door in particular for Team 38 there. They're going to try and make something happen, but they're only stuck behind the rear bumper of the Williams Esports car. So Mighty 38 will jump to the front of the queue potentially, but they have to try and find a way past the Williams Esports car. They've got the inside into the second Mulsanne chicane, which is beautiful news for them. But we have seen drivers all night manage to go around the outside of the chicane too, so there's no guarantees. A lock up in the background, contact, and all 3 cars are off into the wall. A massive shunt, and all 3 teams are done. That is going to be big damage, and all 3 BMWs have been done. So those that are in the Porsche all of a sudden have an opportunity here, because the top 6 is where you get that money. And we've just had 3 BMWs who were expected to be ahead of the Porsches anyway. They've just knocked themselves out of contention with big damage.
Well, it was like seeing a rush from a bank robbery there as the 3 cars got going again. They know that there's cash up for grabs and they want to steal it and hold on to it, but 3 cars all going in to the barriers there, all head on as well. A big incident there. I don't think we've seen much changes in position though, but while we regather and find out exactly what has happened, let's head down to Bryn.
I was just talking to the team from Williams before that happened, from Williams Esports, before that moment happened there. I said, so what's going on with your pit lane and your driver change strategy? And they said, it's going to happen whenever it's needed, is what they said. They were very wry smile. He wasn't going to give anything away. It'll happen when it's needed, I was told. And then that happened. So that might force their hand, because if they're going to have to repair their car, this is the time to do it.
In one change out of that, CNP have now gone up to 6th place, so they have gained a place out of that. But other than that, of course, we've had time lost for all 3 teams, but CNP going past Williams is the only one, so Williams are the big losers in that. They've gone down to 7th place. This is Veloce we are on board with, who are still closing in on the leaders. But to just give you a rundown of the order now, we've had that incident We've got Baguette still leading from Veloce, then it's Kitty Crew. Wildcats are fourth, but 30 seconds back from third. Then it's Mighty 38, CMP, Williams, and Keep It Simple. But this is a gap that has closed down, and it is between our two leaders, Bo. Veloce closing in further on Baguette Racing. The gap is now less than 2 seconds.
Yeah, this is an incredible job by Noah Schmitz at the moment. He is driving this car like a bat out of hell. He's doing a brilliant job, and just everywhere closing in on Aurelian Mallet. But I have to wonder if how much of that is Aurelian having to be careful with his track limits. He knows there is no, he doesn't have anywhere less he can go now. He has to make sure he's within track limits. One little mistake and he is done for. And it's not just him either as the driver, it's the entire team. So even if the next driver makes a mistake, it could be all over. So in the first stint as well, we saw the drivers go out to lap number 9 on a tank of fuel. That means Aurelian Mallet and Noah Schmitz in these two cars at the moment might only have 4 more laps until we get our final drivers in the car.
And who's going to come into the pits first when they do? Is it going to be Veloce or is it going to be Baguette Racing? Because you said earlier in the race, 1.2 seconds, and you should start feeling the effect of a tow. The gap is 1.3, so we are very close to seeing that in this Le Mans Esports Series Super Final. This, the 9th and final race of the weekend, and this will put our top 3 teams out of this race onto the Le Mans podium then as we go in towards the Mulsanne chicane. This the second of 2 Mulsanne chicanes, and now we make the run down towards Mulsanne corner. It's still, it's 1.1 seconds now, the gap, so Veloce are now locked into the toe of Baguette Racing as they head down to Mulsanne corner, and this is it. The hard work has now paid off. Veloce are in the toe. They'll be helped down the Mulsanne straight by Racing Baguette, and their attempt to chase down a race lead has just been made a little bit easier with closing that gap down there.
Yeah, and Baguette Racing just went wide into Mulsanne as well, so if they weren't in the slipstream already, they are now. It's down to 1 second, and they got a better run as well, did Veloce Esports. So this is coming right down to the wire. They are doing a brilliant job, but the issue is we are approaching the pit stop so very soon, so it's going to be an entire refresh of drivers. So is the driver going into Veloce Esports car just as quick as Noah is at the moment? If he's not, Noah might have to make this move happen right here, right now.
Well, we've got, of course, 1 stop to go, as you said, but what an interesting situation this is. Baguette Racing, the all-French driver lineup leading the way, but they are being caught by one of our wildcard entries. Yes, wildcard entries, one of 2 wildcard entries who, of course, joined the event late, so they were one of the late entries for Veloce. And are they going to be the team that goes on to take the race win? They are a well-known team within the community. Of course, everyone knows the name Veloce. And are they going to be the first team to stand on top of the Le Mans podium in the Le Mans Esports Series? Through the Porsche curve we go, and the gap is now less than 1 second. We are on lap number 15 of 24, and I wonder if this, with Veloce closing in, is this going to force a pit stop from Baguette Racing early, or is it going to force them to stay out even longer than they intended?
I think stay out even longer than intended. See if you can block off the Veloce Esports car, as well as Aurelian, who is a very, very solid peddler himself, so he might be able to just hold him off a little bit longer. But just interesting to note that Noah Schmitz was actually setting quicker lap times than James Baldwin, now down into a 350.3. So Noah Schmitz has raw pace. He is very, very fast.
And if anyone was wondering what has come out of that instant between the likes of Mighty 38, Williams and Wildcats, well, they were 3 wide. And because they were so busy looking at each other, they forgot to brake, basically, and all went straight on into the barriers with some force as well. So it is a racing incident. No penalties will be awarded because all 3 teams missed their braking markers. And that is the result of that. So with that out of the way, we can go now back to the race lead. Veloce close enough here to close in down towards these chicanes, and Baguette Racing, now it's this time, Bo. I'm sure you've been in this situation before where you're being caught, you can see that you're coming onto a long straight, and now you're already planning a defence.
Yeah, you need to plan defence early, but at this point there's not much you can do apart from duck and weave. Just sit, so he's gone to the other side of the circuit to what he would normally do. Now he would probably fade back out to the left as well. So you're only allowed to make 1 defensive move, but you are allowed to break the slipstream should you wish as well. So it's a very fine line there between that, but Baguette Racing, it wasn't worth much because the gaps come down to just 0.4 of a second. And this is the point where if Veloce Esports get a great run out of a chicane, if they get a great run out of Mulsanne corner, for example, they have every chance of making a move stick.
Well, Veloce, they've got to be careful in their approach in making this move, though. They do not want to make a move that sees both cars off the circuit and landing a penalty. So Veloce have to be careful here as they come up towards the Mulsanne chicane. When they make their move, it needs to be executed properly so that they can get a gap and pull away.
Yeah, absolutely, but it's going to be very tricky to make that gap and pull away because, of course, the slipstream is so powerful here that it's very difficult to make that breakaway, and you can see there that Baguette Racing using all of the track there on the exit. It's not going to affect them in any way, shape or form. It's just going to make sure that they're not getting as much slipstream for Veloce Esports behind, so that's a very interesting point there. But how do they go now into the next section of corners? Well,
let's find out. You can see Veloce working away at the wheel there, going up towards Mulsanne corner as we hit the braking zone. I wonder who was going to arrive there first. So we'll return to the track very shortly, but there is Noah Schmitz. You can see that doesn't look like a driver that has $25,000 ahead and the chance to stand on the Le Mans podium. That looks like a driver going for a Sunday drive. Very calm in the seat is Noah Schmitz at the moment, and now looking left and right, and this the first time we've seen a real defence from Baguette Racing, so they haven't been tested in defending in this race so far, but they are now. This is for top prize, to remind everyone, this for the race lead in the Le Mans Esports Series Super Final. Out of Arnage we go on lap number 16 of 24. We've still got a number of laps to sort this one out, but we've got a pit stop to do as well.
Yeah, and not just the pit stop, a driver change as well. None of these two drivers will be finishing the car either, so there is all kinds of change happening in this race still to come. You can see that actually Veloce just lost a little bit of ground to Baguette Racing through that section of corners through and out of Arnage, so not the best run there. And if they are going to be pitting on this lap, which if they're going to go for an 8-8-8 split for their pit stops, this is the lap to do it. This is lap 16, so we might see one of these two cars come into the pits on this time. I think Veloce have to be ready here, but it doesn't look like they are, because the next driver would be Veloce Dave, basically, to come into that car, and he is, of course, on the other side of the stand. So expect Veloce to stay out. Let's see what Baguette do. They stay out as well. It's game on for yet another lap.
And that's what's great to see with our arena. We can see when the driver is actually getting ready to go into the rig, and at the moment Veloce aren't doing that, nor are Baguette Racing. They're going to stay on track one more time as we head now on to lap number 17. Baguette Racing are race leaders at the moment, but under a huge amount of pressure from Veloce Esports as we go up towards the Dunlop chicane for the 17th time. When do Veloce Esports make their move? Is it going to be straight away on this lap, or are they going to wait and play the long game? Considering they've brought down a 15-second gap to Baguette Racing since the start, I'd say Veloce are going to go for this as quickly as possible. But can Baguette Racing stop them? There you can see the focus on Noah Schmitz in the Veloce Esports rig as they now go onto Mulsanne straight. Here it is then. Here comes the run down towards the first chicane. And are we going to see a change for the lead? The two BMWs in the slipstream. Noah Schmitz we can see just behind us as we are on board with Baguette Racing. Looking to the inside. Now they'll switch back to the outside. Baguette Racing cannot weave. They can only make one defensive move, and then they'll have to stay where they are. And that is why we can see Veloce drawing to the outside as we go into the first chicane. But for now, Bo, it stays as it is.
Yeah, it absolutely does. But the beautiful thing about Le Mans is you get three of these straights down the Mulsanne to have a crack at it. And of course, probably the best of the three opportunities is the very final one into the even harsher braking zone of Mulsanne. But we have seen plenty of passes made into the second chicane, so we'll see Veloce closing millimetre by millimetre, just trying to get that draft where he can. But he's pulling out to the outside already, fakes to the inside, now back to the outside again. He's just looking everywhere, but that's not trying to go for an overtake. That's just fill the mirrors, distract Aurélien Mallet.
Well, that's exactly what he's trying to do, but Aurélien Mallet not getting distracted so far, and they always seem to take that wide line every time, and that's allowed Veloce just to draw alongside onto the outside. So now we go towards Mulsanne corner. Of course, how many races have we seen decided, and how many race leads have we seen changed down here at Le Mans? Are we about to see another one? Veloce, I think they might just have the advantage on the braking. They're going to be side by side for the first time here. Baguette Racing forcing them wide, and Veloce are going to try and hold on, but Veloce in the end just kicking up the gravel there and having to stop back into second.
Yeah, and that gravel's hurt their exit speed quite a lot out of Mulsanne. They've lost a lot of time there. They're still going to be within slipstream, but any chance they had into Indianapolis, into the run out of Arnage is possibly gone, as it's now out to 6.5 tenths of a second, which is not what you're going to find very easily in just the space of 3 corners. So for Veloce Esports, it's going to be a very tough time, but you know, they'll regroup for the next lap, they'll see what they can do. But the interesting thing is we are approaching that pit stop window a lot closer now, so Noah Schmitz might only have one more crack at this.
Well, I imagine if you're Veloce now, if you see Baguette come in, stay out. But and of course, if they stay out, then you're going to stay out anyway. You think that's going to be the thinking from them?
Absolutely, but the cars can only do 9 laps. So if Baguette Racing stay out, then I think Veloce must come in as well. Whatever they do, they have to do the opposite. So they can do 1 more lap, they cannot do 2 more.
So basically, this is it. If no one comes in to the pits this time, then next time we expect that they will both have to come in because of fuel. There we can see the Baguette Racing driver of Orion Mallet in for the second stint, of course, and doing a great job to hold off Veloce at the moment, who have had one real big attempt at taking this lead. It was unsuccessful, but they've still got a long time to do it, and they know that the driver changes are coming up as well. Let's see if anything changes now. We're coming up to pit lane. No, they both stay out, so it looks like they're going to be on exactly the same strategy all the way to the end. Here we come out of the chicane then. We're about to start lap number 18. A little bit of a shake of the head there from Baguette Racing. I wonder if that's some more frustrations of 1 or 2 problems that they were mentioning that they were having, but we've of course covered that. We'll go back to this battle for the lead, and Veloce getting closer. Now, Veloce have tried that move, Bo. How does that change things now? They know that they've been able to try and make that move, but just getting confirmation that both teams will come into the pits this time, but they've tried to make a move, didn't quite work out. So does that change their thinking?
Oh no, it doesn't, because they're up the inside at La Chapelle. A horrible run there by Baguette Racing. They just hooked on the inside curb, and out of nowhere Veloce Esports take the lead through Tetre Rouge. A change of your lead, a change of ownership temporarily for the $25,000 prize, and top step on the Le Mans Esports podium as well. This is a fantastic run, but we know how quick these BMWs are in the slipstream. We saw the effect that Veloce had when they were behind Baguette Racing. Now Baguette are behind Veloce.
We had quite literally a live reaction from Baguette Racing there, and I say the good thing to see is keeping very composed is Orion Mallet, but Veloce are now the ones leading. Baguette Racing, if they can get a good run out of this chicane, then they'll get closer in the slipstreams, but it looks to be Veloce that are pulling the pin here. Veloce, a fantastic run through the first Mulsanne chicane. Now they head down towards the second one, and it's getting very, very busy around the pit garage there of Veloce Esports. Lots of people gathered round at the moment, so driving with an audience is Noah Schmitz around him, but doing very well to hold on to this race lead, having taken it a little bit earlier in the lap at a place that certainly caught all of us out. But Veloce, they still have to try and hold on to this now for another 5 laps or so, and Baguette Racing, of course, have the chance during that time, I'm sure, to try and retake it again if they can stay where they are. We are coming up towards Mulsanne corner then, and will we see Baguette Racing closing in under braking?
Oh, yes, they've overshot.
No, we did. Well, we did, because they overshot, as you said there, Bo. They mentioned that they're having 1 or 2 problems with their braking zones. Is this going to help being behind Veloce now? Do you reckon that will help them sort it out?
It could actually help them a little bit, because they can reference braking markers off where Veloce are braking and all of that. But the issue is that I think that at the moment Baguette Racing are almost driving angry. They've got red mist. They're, you saw even exiting the Ford chicane that Orion Mallet was shaking his head. He was not happy. He was not content with something. And then it wasn't even an overtake into La Chapelle by Veloce Esports. It was a mistake by Baguette Racing. They got hooked on the inside curb, took too much of it, and it's all gone horribly wrong. And now the slipstream range on Forza is roughly 1.2 seconds for these GT cars. It's 1.3 seconds the lead. Something isn't clicking for Baguette Racing right now.
Who practice their pit stops the best, though, because we've got that run into the pit lane. They both have to do it on this lap. And will there be a shift in the gap when we get to that stage? They are coming towards the pit lane, as you will know now, through the famous Porsche curves first, and then we will head up to the pit lane to make the second and final stops of the race. Your two race leaders very close together still, albeit with Veloce just pulling a little bit of a gap, having taken the race lead. But down to the pits we go now, Bo. It's time to hand over to the final drivers, and all Veloce need to do now is get a clean run in.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll see how they go, of course. Very committed under brakes. You can see both cars there in the background making their way in, and it looks perfect there for Veloce Esports. So Noah Schmitz will get out, and it will be Dave who will get on into the car. So what can he do? And of course we'll have our final driver for Baguette Racing getting into their car as well. So it is all changed. It is the final drivers. This is the only race where all three drivers must be a part of this winning combination.
Well, here we go. Let's see if there's any difference between the two. There you can see Baguette Racing pulling out of their pit box. They are just draw up to the back of Veloce. Of course, the speed they're going at will, of course, shrink the gap we did see at full speed. Let's see as they come out of the pits. Foot down for Veloce and foot down for Baguette Racing. And as we saw Veloce now just extending to about a second lead once again. I'd say perhaps Baguette Racing closed in slightly there.
Yeah, and we're actually just seeing a handshake now from Maruli Malay and Virus. So all very good reactions there, nice and friendly. And that was beautiful stuff there to see. And we might even just head down to Bryn now with an interview.
Just congratulate each other really for what a great battle that was. I'm going to try and dive in and see if I can get some words from them. So first of all, let's go over to Veloce. Now that was a great battle, and well, you were kept honest, weren't you?
Yeah, just like found pace somehow, catch up to him, and yeah, we had a great battle.
When you come to competition like this, if you've got someone pushing you, it actually can keep you focused, can't it? And if you're allowed to relax, that's when mistakes can happen.
Well, that's why I'm trying to never relax during races.
Did you think at any stage of maybe changing your strategy and coming in for a pit earlier to change drivers to try and get the jump on them?
I don't think it was a good idea to pit earlier, but maybe, yeah, to fight a bit less to secure for second position.
It was a fantastic battle, and there's still 5 laps to go, so there's still all to play for. What a great battle that was.
Live reaction from both our drivers having just stepped out of the rigs as well. But Bo, whilst we were having that interview, we actually saw a bit of a mistake there, didn't we?
Yeah, we did, and it was another braking issue there for the Baguette Racing car, of course. And they just overshot there into the first chicane. There's nothing else I can really say about that. Just too late on the brakes and way too much entry speed. Never looked like it was going to make the apex. And I just had to run through the chicane, and that gap went from, I believe it was 9/10 of a second when they came out of the pits. It's now 2 seconds on the dot.
Well, as you said, they're having that problem with the braking zones, the braking markers, what is being displayed to them. Chris Cabrera, that's the first time he would have had to take that on, and I think he's just maybe felt the effect of how much it perhaps is affecting them.
Yeah, absolutely, because a lot of these drivers wouldn't have had any practice or anything until literally qualifying a few days ago. So it was a long time ago, and it's a big way to actually, get used to the circumstances of the car. And the gap's now at 2.7 seconds. So Baguette Racing are really struggling at the moment. It's just not working for them. And you can actually see carrying a lot of entry speed there. That was actually a really nice few corners there for him. But Veloce Esports do look like a very, very strong combination at the moment. And David Kelly doesn't look like he's cracking under any pressure at the moment. He's doing a beautiful job.
Well, let's check in with the gap. It is just over 2 seconds now, but with the lead battle settling down for now, and we'll say for now just in case it should change a little bit further into the race. We'll check in with what's going on a little bit further down the field because Mighty 38 are battling away with CMP for 5th place, and battles, we're not going to get stopped getting treated to battles here, Bryn, because as the lead battle finishes for now, more are developing.
Him how he was feeling. He had his head in his hands, and I said, so how are you? And he just shook his head, and I said, well, you can go and relax now. He said, I can't relax now at all. His work is done, and work is the right word, because those two, they have been troopers, haven't they, David and Christopher? They've really, really worked hard in that seat, and right now, we said whisper it, let's carry on whispering it right now. Team of 2 had lots thrown at them over the last few days, and currently we'll leave it there.
And we will leave it there, but we will pick it up very shortly as well, because Mighty 38, there they are. We've just been talking about them in 5th place. And they're doing a very good job. Ahead of them, we've got 4th place. They are just behind Wildcats, and Wildcats are doing very well in this last one. Mighty 38 just a little bit out of shape there, but nothing too dramatic. And Mighty 38, as well as being in 5th, have a chance to potentially go into 4th place here.
Yeah, they absolutely do, and it's very, very close between those two cars. As you can see, they're both in the same camera shot, and we'll see if they can actually close on one another heading into this final section. And Wildcats, they're just trying to make a bit of a breakaway here from Mighty 38, but you know, Mighty 38 does look solid. Of course, they have that little slide through the Porsche curves, but otherwise the car looks settled. It doesn't look like it's moving around all too much. And we'll just try and get an idea of the feet difference. It's only about 150 feet on track, the difference between the two cars at the moment.
So that's not a big gap at all, is it? And here we can see Mighty 38 coming through the Dunlop chicane. They can see Wildcats ahead. Wildcats have doing a good job to just hold off Mighty 38 and stop them from getting into the tow. Of course, 1.2 seconds it is when you start to feel that benefit. And I imagine as a driver, when you get into that zone, you know it's 1.2 seconds, you almost start to drive even more perfectly.
It's a confidence booster, so you start to, you get a bit more in tune with the game, you are a bit more alert to what's going on, and you can also focus quite a fair bit more. So it's quite a nice feeling when you do get into that range, but of course, the closer you are to the car, the stronger the slipstream. So 1.2 seconds is really just where the slipstream is beginning to take effect, and it's really after about 7/10 where you'll really notice the effect of it.
Well, here we go. We can see Mighty 38 coming through the second chicane for what is the 20th time of 24 laps. Well, if you've not really been with us so far, if you're joining us in the arena, we started this yesterday at 11 o'clock, and here we are around 24 hours later, and we are on the last 5 laps of our very last race in the Le Mans Esports Series Super Final. This is the big one, though. This is where the winner gets $25,000. The top 6 teams all get points. Not only that, the top 3 teams will head down to the Le Mans podium in an hour or so, and as the grid is forming up underneath them, they will be spraying the champagne, celebrating a very deserved podium finish. So very fantastic stuff, a lot to play for, and that is being shown through some of the moves we've been seeing. You can tell everyone giving it absolutely everything they had. And around 20 laps ago, Alan McNish, of course a Le Mans winner, came up on the stage and gave the drivers a little talk just to say, do not give up, don't give up until that checkered flag flies. That is the most important thing to remember, and Veloce certainly pushing as hard as they can. They want to see that checkered flag, as we only have just a few laps to go. So if you're in the arena, do not go anywhere, because very shortly we're going to be crowning our very first Le Mans Esports Series Super Final champions.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's crazy to think that 23 hours ago we were talking strategy. How do you build yourself up to this very last race? It's all about building momentum. It's all about getting those points to get yourself into this position. It's not about building up to this position anymore. It's about you're in this position. It's time to execute. It's time to perform. And right now, Veloce Esports are doing just that. But there is 4 very long laps at Le Mans still to go. Baguette Racing, they're no slouches. The gap is 4 seconds at the moment. 1 second a lap, we've seen it happen before 100 times over. This is not over by any stretch.
1 second a lap, one mistake, that's all it takes,
exactly.
Isn't it? And as you said, they've done all the hard work now. We're pretty much there. We are on lap 21 of 24, so we're almost to the very final checkered flag of this event. They've got themselves in the position. There's no more building up to it, as you said. It's about trying to take advantage of it.
Absolutely, and that's what Veloce Esports have done. Did they have the best handicap? No. Did they have the best lead up into this event? No, they didn't. But they've taken all of their advantages that they had. They took every little strength they could possibly make. We saw how good they were in the Le Mans starts. We saw them practicing that. on Saturday nights, on Thursday night when we were doing the qualifying sessions. We saw them practicing pit entries as well. When everyone else was doing that practice race, these guys were going over small little details. Small details is what wins you these races.
And what does that show? That shows a hell of a lot of confidence, doesn't it? That shows I don't even need to practice my normal race lines, my braking points. I've got that covered. Now I need to just focus on the stuff that wins you races.
Well, James Baldwin in the media was even saying that, he thought Veloce Esports were going in there as a bit of an underdog. He had only had 2 weeks to practice. This was his first ever time doing a Forza event. So for him, it was he was an underdog. He wasn't expecting much. It was just see how the team would go. But out of nowhere, they've proven to be one of the strongest teams in the GTEs. They weren't so competitive in some of the other classes. The second it gets to these GTE cars, though, this team shone.
Well, you say that, of course, they are only 3 laps away now from getting onto the top of that Le Mans podium, and what a feeling that would be for these guys. They all take this very, very seriously, esports racing. It's what they do. It's what they do for a living, in fact. And these drivers, this is the big prize for them. Standing on the biggest podium in the world, there couldn't literally be anything better than that to win. So they'd even take that over the money in some cases, well, wouldn't it? The experience of being on that podium, but the money, just a bonus to go along with it. And in 3 laps' time, if Veloce don't make any mistakes, they'll be heading to victory.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, Veloce are an extremely successful team, but they haven't won an event like the Le Mans Esports Series. This is a unique event. They don't come much bigger than this event. This has been building up for so many months now. This has been huge. It's been everywhere. And now Veloce Esports are in the perfect position to win it. But there's still many laps to go. It's not done yet.
Yeah, it's been a huge lead up, as you've said. We've been kind of doing our qualification process in conjunction with the FIA World Endurance Championship. Their super season comes to an end here over the next 2 days at Le Mans. Ours comes to an end here right now in this race in the Le Mans Esports Series Super Final. And this is the race where we will crown our champions, our very first champions. They will go down in history for a long, long time. And so far, Veloce have driven absolutely superbly. When they took that move for the lead, they did exactly what we talked about. Make a move and get a gap in the process of doing it. A very hard thing to do, isn't it? It's something you can't practice. It has to be off-driver instinct.
Absolutely, and there's so many things in racing that you can't practice, and racecraft and fighting someone of the caliber of Baguette Racing's Julian Mallet is one of those things. And they put up the fight. Noah Schmitz did an amazing job to reel in that margin, to try and make a move, put him under pressure, which he did. We saw mistakes from Aurelian even before that incident at La Chapelle even happened. So, they've played every aspect perfectly. I mean, they're no strangers to sim racing. They know how to win races. They know how to win championships. And they're proving it once again today, as we have a great battle going on as well for 4th and 5th between, of course, Mighty 38, who are, of course, probably one of the stars of the show, it has to be said. And of course, on the Le Mans broadcast, you often hear the commentators talking about the Spirit of Le Mans award. I think if anyone's going to get the Spirit of Le Mans award out of here, Mighty 38's a great candidate.
Indeed, and for everyone around the arena, just imagine this. 2 drivers had to fill 24 hours of the event between them. The 3rd driver not here, unfortunately, so it was left to 2 drivers to do 20 hours and a half of racing between them. And we've got a huge crowd in the arena to get this event wrapped up. We've only got a couple of laps to go now, so thank you to everyone for joining us around the arena. Thank you for everyone to wherever you're watching around the world. History being created right in front of our eyes, and Mighty 38 want an even bigger prize than they have already. Of course, in 5th place they'll take $2,000. If they take 4th, they will take $4,000. They may not have got any cash so far in this event, but they have saved the best until last. Somehow they seem to have the energy to do this.
Yeah, this is absolutely remarkable. They've just come alive in this 9th and final race, which is exactly what you need to do. And we were talking about this. Do drivers save their energy? Do they save their resources for this final race? maybe Mighty 38 have, and they're able to perform so well because, of course, if you win one of these races, one of the 8 races that preceded this, it was $3,000 for the victory. If they can walk away with a 4th place, in this race, that's $4,000 immediately. So that is huge news for Mighty 38.
Well, you just saw the crowd there. You had a look at it from our camera. It is massive in here. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for the last couple of laps then in the Le Mans Esports Series Super Final. Give us a wave. You're on camera. You're live around the world on Motorsport TV. Thank you all for being with us. This is what is making the atmosphere in here so fantastic. It was so tense. We had a big atmosphere at the start, didn't we? Then through the night, it was absolutely dead in here. And now we are back to this amazing atmosphere. This, I'd say, the best it's been all weekend. So thank you to everyone around the arena in the fan zone for doing this. We're building up to the last lap of the race, and this a battle for 4th place. It looks like it's changed hands. Mighty 38 have gone into 4th place. The 2 driver lineup now into 4th place. How they are doing this, I do not know. Wildcats dropped to 5th place, and Wildcats now have to try and fight back.
Yeah, exactly. What can Wildcats do? They've only got a limited amount of time now. It is all or nothing for Wildcats if they want this extra $2,000, and of course 4th place in this event. So we're going to see how this goes. A lock up there for Mighty 38. It's going to hurt their exit a little bit, but it's also wrong for Wildcat in the background. They're both making little errors. The pressure on the shoulders of these drivers right now is through the roof. The whole world is watching these guys. There is so much riding on this and so much money. They don't want to go home empty-handed. This is what they came for. This is the race they were all preparing for. This is the one they had highlighted.
Well, it's not just that. If you were in a car, you wouldn't have this many people within touching distance, would you? And that's another challenge. There you can see, imagine being by one of those screens, driving, looking behind briefly and seeing hundreds of people gathered into the arena, watching your every single move, your every single gear change, where you're braking as well. It's under a huge amount of pressure from the drivers, and there you can see just how composed they are. I say how much pressure they're under. They're not showing it at all, even if they are feeling it. But Mighty 38 we go back to in 4th place and pulling away. Well, they are not giving up at all, are they? They are pushing to that checkered flag. They have been doing what Alan McNish is saying. Just breathe, just take a deep breath and start going for it, and that's exactly what they are doing here. They are pushing it to the limit through the Porsche curves, running it to the exit of the circuit at every opportunity. Mighty 38, this is fantastic stuff. But how about this? Race leaders now onto the Mulsanne straight for the penultimate time. There's the teammates. I don't think they can even look at the camera at the moment. I imagine that the nerves are building up between those two. They have done hours and hours of racing between them, and now it is in the hands of their teammate to wrap it up.
And it's the worst feeling as a driver when you have to have full trust in your teammate, knowing that you can do nothing at that point to change the outcome. It is all in the hands of David Kelly for Veloce Esports to make this happen. He's the only one that has any bearing on this event at the moment. What James Baldwin's done and what Noah Schmitz has done, it's in the past now. It is all about what they can do at Veloce Esports as a team, and that rests on David Kelly's shoulders. One mistake, one error, and Baguette Racing come back into this. Of course, they have managed to build the margin. That is perfect for their sake, but we have seen Le Mans be so cruel in the past.
Well, for everyone in the arena, do squeeze in. Let's get as many people in here as possible for this historical event. If you're around, stick with us because there's about to be a party, and Veloce Esports could be our host in just a lap and a half time. So within the next 5 minutes, we will know our champions of the Le Mans Esports Series Super Final, and that is the driver you can see on screen, Gary Mitchell, in the hands of the Veloce Esports car. He is the person that's trying to take it home at the moment. A lot of pressure on him. $25,000 pretty much in his hands to bring home, but also to throw away if he's to make a mistake.
Exactly, there is so much pressure on him. A single mistake and the entire world would know, and know what he has lost as well, because it's not just about the money. It is that trip to the podium on the Le Mans podium, which is more special than any other one else out there. It is an incredible experience and one you won't get anywhere else. So for him right now and for the entire Veloce team, all they can do is cross their fingers and hope for the best, because right now they have a brilliant situation. Clean air, car is undamaged, and there's nothing but clear sunshine ahead for Veloce.
I'm pretty sure I just saw the Veloce drivers looking for fingernails to bite because they ran out. That's how tense it is getting here now as they head up towards the Porsche curves out of our notch. They have gone. It's Veloce doing a fantastic job at the moment. They've driven superbly so far, and they are about to start the last lap. There is Gary Mitchell. Would he know that if he looks behind him, there's his teammates, and there's a huge crowd gathering as well, and Gary Mitchell not flinching at all. Full focus for him in the Veloce car as he is about to start the last lap of the Le Mans Esports Series Super Final. Baguette Racing second place, Kitty Crew third, Mighty 48 are in fourth, and then we have Wildcats in fifth place as we come up towards the Ford chicanes. This for the penultimate time. Give them some support as they come out the Ford chicanes, ladies and gentlemen, because I think they could do with it. Veloce are about to come across the line to start the last lap. Let's give them some encouragement. All the drivers, in fact, whether you're Veloce or Advocatus back in 12th place, they are about to finish 24 hours of competitive action. 20 and a half hours of racing across 9 different categories. It's been a very intense 24 hours for these guys, for all 3 drivers in all teams both.
Absolutely, we have to remember this is so much bigger than just race number 9. This is 20,000 competitors all wanting to get a spot into this series. This is all the qualification rounds. This is the 6 hours of qualifying that went down to just a 10th of a second. This is the 23 hours and 57 minutes we've currently watched. This is the final 3 minutes, and it's all in David Kelly's hands.
And they came from long and far. We had individual qualifying teams that came together from around the world. Here at this event, we had wildcard teams in guess what, Veloce and SMP. We had some regular teams come with us, the top 4 in the Le Mans Esports Series Championship, but this is the final. This is the one they all want to win, and out of 20,000 competitors from all across the globe, it is the 3 drivers in the Veloce Esports car that are the ones about to take that top prize. They will stand on the top step of the Le Mans podium if they can make it home safe. They'll take $25,000 to add to the prize fund that they already have at the moment. It's not a long way for them to go now, but not a long way to go for all of our teams as well. We'll give a shout out to every single team going around at the moment on their final lap. There you can see the drivers, the Veloce teammates. You see James Baldwin to the right there, Noah Schmitz to the left. Very nervous indeed. Give us a wave, guys. Maybe I'll try again in a bit because James Baldwin and Noah Schmitz getting very, very nervous, I'm sure. $25,000 up for grabs as we get towards the end of the race.
Yeah, well, we heard James Baldwin's interview before. He said he wouldn't be nervous after his stint was done, but I'm sure that's all changed a little bit now. The pressure is all on Veloce Esports. They've got everything in the bag, assuming they don't throw the car in the wall. How many self-mistakes have we seen during this 24 hours? Fatigue is such a factor. You can just lose that mental focus for just a millisecond and you find your car on the wall. We saw it happen with Williams Esport earlier in the race with that 3-car pile-up into the second Mulsanne chicane. It is so easy to make a mistake at this circuit. This is a circuit that punishes drivers, and Veloce Esports have come here for 24 hours and not slipped up when it mattered most.
And just to remind you, Veloce Esports, they started a whole 15 seconds behind the race leaders, Baguette Racing, the home favourites, but Veloce Esports closed down 50 seconds, a 15 seconds gap in their own accord. When they got there, they pulled off perhaps one of the best moves we have seen over the 24 hours. It was a move that saw them go into the race lead and into a solid race lead as well, taking a gap with it. And now all they have left to negotiate is the Porsche curves before we come up towards the Ford chicane. How many times have you seen this? It's that famous run through the last few corners where the drivers are almost celebrating already, and we're about to crown our first champion in the Le Mans Esports Series Super Final, and it looks as if Gary Mitchell is even enjoying himself there, putting on a little bit of a show for us through the Porsche curves, doing a little bit of drifting there, but it's now time to bring it home. Gary almost wanted to get his hands off the wheel and celebrate already. 20,000 competitors came down to this after months and months of competition. 24 hours of racing here at Le Mans. We have crowned our champions. The Le Mans Esports Series Super Final won by Veloce Esports. Give them a round of applause as they come across the line. They are crowned our first ever champions. Fantastic stuff from Veloce Esports, and they will stand on the top step of the Le Mans podium in just an hour's time, and they take $25,000 on top of what they already have.
And they had to do it the hard way either. They were not gifted this victory. Of course, they had 15 seconds to hunt down at the start of the race. They hunted down every single one of those seconds. They had to fight with a Aurelian melee. They had to go around the outside, didn't work, had to put pressure, try and make Aurelian crack, and it didn't happen until it finally did through La Chapelle. They got the lead and they absolutely ran with it. It was a dominant drive once they got into the lead, fully deserving of the victory.
Thank you to everyone in the arena for staying with us to create that fantastic atmosphere we had at the end. And thank you to everyone who has been watching. Give us your reactions live now at Le Mans Esports. Let us know what you think of that result. Give them another round of applause for Veloce Esports it is, who take the win. They are our first ever champions. And how about Baguette Racing? They deserve a hand as well, finishing in second place today. Fantastic result from the all-French driver lineup. Let's get some reaction now down in the arena with Bryn.
Yeah, thanks very much there, chaps. Great commentary. Well, Veloce Esports, congratulations, the first ever winners of the Le Mans Esports series. That was pretty remarkable. Well done.
Yeah, that was unreal. It's not what we expected starting the last race, but when you got Virus and James going before you, they make it easy for you. They did all the hard work. All I did was do 6 laps, nice, easy pace. They did everything. Congratulations, boys.
Oh, well, hang on a second. Look at this here. It doesn't really matter how many laps each you did as a team, and when you've been driving for 20 and a half hours, it really does come down to an entire team, the way the team works, your planning, your practice, what you're doing yesterday with driving in and out of the pits and learning about these things. The commentators were saying how much time you spent preparing for just little things like driving in the pits and making sure you knew every pit entrance.
Yeah, Noah's stint was like the best stint I've seen anyone do in any race. Lage is a Forza world champion in motorsport. Like, he's top of the top, and Noah smashed him. So setup work from Dave was brilliant, and everything just came together in that last race. We're the best team.
I think the world has a new Iceman. You were very, very cool, very, very calm.
Yeah, just had amazing pace. Both these guys did a good job. So just really happy. Can't believe it, really.
Well, look, you can take a few minutes just to collect your thoughts, because very, very soon we'll be heading off to the podium here at Le Mans, and you'll get to lift that trophy on the top step. What does that mean to you? Forget the money, forget $31,000, forget that. Forget that. Give it to me. Who cares? But what does the podium, the top step mean, and the fact you get to do that celebration, have that moment?
I don't know, mate. I'll find out in a minute. Honestly, I can't believe it's happening. Really can't.
As Alan Manish said before, breathe and enjoy it. We'll see you on the top step of the podium very soon. But don't rush off, because I'm going to find some other teams here. We've still got some cars finishing their laps. I'm searching now for Baguette Racing. I'm going to go and find them in just... well, hopefully I'll find them very soon. Oh, they're over here. Right, I'm going to be going over this side to grab someone from Baguette Racing. Let's see who we've got. Let's grab them over here, because they've earned themselves a second place on the podium. Baguette Racing. Well, it wasn't the step you wanted to be standing on, but you've just got yourselves on the podium here at Le Mans. Congratulations. That was an incredibly hard-fought 9 races.
Yeah, obviously I wanted the win, and we all wanted that. But yeah, Veloce guys did a great job, and I actually enjoyed the battle with them. So yeah, congrats to them.
It was just an incredible battle, and we couldn't have wished for a better way to end it here, to have so much drama and so many races. Well, not that many mistakes actually from you guys. Really nice to see.
Yeah, we was like, I wouldn't say like dominating, but in the night we like taking a lot of points. So we were actually good for the last race, but we made a few mistakes, and the pace of Veloce was insane. So yeah, great job to them, and we'll be second. So.
Well, look, overall, $17,500. That's not bad for 24 hours, is it? You'd take that. You know, it's not the top step, but it's second on the steps. It's not too bad there. Let's move on to the third place team, shall we? Let's run around and see if we can find Kitty Crew. They are down here. They worked extremely hard as well. We saw them sweating a fair bit, especially through the night, shivering too, actually, in some cases, because it was pretty cold here in the arena. But how about this third place overall for you? You've got yourself a place on the podium.
I mean, after qualifying, I don't think we even expected to be here. It was a great performance. We had some hiccups along the way, but I couldn't be prouder of these guys.
I was just looking at your results. You had a fourth, then a third, first, and then a first along the way as well before the 9th race. You've just earned yourself $14,500.
That's not too bad, is it? Dan is definitely our MVP. He did an amazing job this weekend, and we can't be more happy with our third place. I think that's basically optimal of what we could have done.
It was very an amazing thing to watch here. We saw so much competition, so many ups and downs. Was it good from your point of view?
Yeah, I mean, I just had a bit of a down because I didn't have the speed I was expecting. So also apologizing to my teammates because I could have been better. But yeah, I was just trying to be consistent and don't make a big mistake that just hurt us chances. And we stand in the podium, so I think it's worth in the end.
Worth it and some. That was an amazing thing to watch. Well done, you three there. So that's the third step on the podium. I want to go over here, though, because we got one other main story to talk about, and that is Mighty 38. I have to come over, and I have to get words from these guys. Could we please have a massive round of applause for Mighty 38? If you don't know the story about these guys, let me explain it. A team of 3, one of them could not make it, so it was a team of 2. Slight rule change. The other teams had to agree to the change as well. So basically, rather than the time limits that the teams of 3 had, these guys had a maximum 12 hours in the seat. So they had to do no more than 12 hours. They've done that successfully. They also had to make the exact same number of pit stops and changes in the third race. So, sorry, in the last race, race number 9. You guys, you've just got yourself $4,000, and I know that in the middle of the night, it was a long way from your mind, wasn't it?
Well, Dave did the night shift and I did the day shift, but Dave did an excellent job during the night. I'm sure he's absolutely, well, tired. And yeah, I'm chuffed that we got 4th.
When we were watching you through the day yesterday, I think you did a 9-hour stint back-to-back, something like that. You came in and did 10, I think it was, through the night. I mean, there were some dark moments, but your focus never wavered.
Yeah, it was tough, but the gap that was left from missing a driver, we had to fill it, and we had no other choice.
But look at your results. 9, 6, 6, 7, 10, 5, 5, 6. Those are your 8 results from the races we had from the first 19 hours of competition, and then you pull that out of the bag. We should rename you, not Mighty 36, we should call you the Magicians from now on, I think. It was amazing.
Yeah, in the first 5 races, I had incredible pace, but unfortunately, the fatigue took me, and I made a couple of mistakes here and there, but we got there in the end, which is all that matters.
It was remarkable. So I think you can sit back, maybe relax, maybe have a sleep as well. That'd be quite nice, wouldn't it? But well done there to Mighty 36. Well done to every single one of our teams. The people that are here in the arena now, can you please show your appreciation? Put your hands together. Let's make some noise for all the teams that competed in the first ever Le Mans Esports Series Super Final. It was absolutely incredible. Well done to the commentary team as well. 4 guys working extremely hard. I mean, they have been the real troopers. They worked so hard calling the shots throughout the course of this 24-hour broadcast. In fact, we've been on now, I think I was working out that we've been on now for almost 25 hours without stop. So we've got a small matter of the podium here at Le Mans to come. You'll see it in the highlights. If you've enjoyed what you've been watching, please check out LeMansEsports.com, where you can sign up for news of Season 2, and maybe, just maybe, you could be here at Le Mans for the 2nd season, maybe as well earning some money along the way and earning a little stop off on the top step of the podium at Le Mans. That's it from us here. Thank you so much for joining us. What an incredible experience we've had. If you're here at Le Mans, enjoy the 24-hour race. It kicks off in just a few hours. That's it from us. We'll see you again soon. Thanks for watching.